Well, hello again. So, last time we talked about the Nativity, and I went through a nice little hymn with you guys. Today, we're going to be talking about the Nativity, but from a totally different angle. This passage I'm going to read from you is actually from a sermon preached by St. Augustine, who's my patron saint, actually, the Doctor of Grace. If you're unfamiliar, there are doctors of the church, basically meaning that their writings are approved by the church. So anything that they say, you can pretty much take it to the bank. There's some exceptions, but St. Augustine is one of the earlier. He lived a very, very astounding life. If you want to know about his life, you should read the Confessions. It's a fantastic read. And he was very prolific. I mean, I would say on par with Thomas Aquinas in terms of how much they wrote and how many breakthroughs they had, theologically speaking, and the impact of their work on future Christian thinkers and luminaries. So, in any event, today I don't have a compilation of all of his sermons, but I'm told this is Sermon 130. This is an excerpt from that sermon, if you do have a volume of his collected works. And this is one that highlights exactly what it means for Christ to condescend to humanity, to come down and assume a human body. Like, what all does that entail? Because we often are told, like, oh, this was this big thing Christ did for us, to leave the comfort of heaven, to come down to earth, and to experience what you and I do. And sometimes I think that's lost on people. They think, well, this isn't like so bad, like, really? God couldn't do that? That's a big thing for him to do? Which is, of course, wrong-headed. But this shows why, okay? So if you're like me and you need a little bit, you need that fleshed out, why was it so important that he came down? And how was it so grievous? In what ways did it insult his nature to become human? This is the work for you. Okay, I'm gonna read it once through, and then I'm gonna pick some of these apart because they're just so profound. So here it is. The creator of man became man. The ruler of the stars sucked at a mother's breast. The bread was hungry. The fountain was thirsty. The light was asleep. The way was weary from the journey. The truth was accused by false witnesses. The judge of the living and the dead was judged by a mortal judge. Justice was condemned by the unjust. The teacher was beaten with whips. The vine was crowned with thorns. The fountain was suspended on wood. Strength grew weak. The healer was wounded. Life died. Oh my goodness. So it's obviously very profound. These are all sort of paradoxes. There's a long history of paradox in Christian theology. Probably most modernly, you see it in C.S. Lewis, you see it in Chesterton. They're like the kings of paradox. And it's because Christianity is a paradoxical religion. I mean, it makes no sense on the face of it. A paradox being something that seems impossible, but actually is true. So, Christianity's paradoxical. It seems like a religion that's too good to be true, or in this case, too bad to be true. But it is. It is absolutely true. So this is all, everything that follows from that first line. The creator of man became man. Okay, and then there's a semicolon, and all the rest of it is just commas separating these different titles of God. So Jesus was the ruler of stars, yet he sucked at his mother's breast. I've also heard it said that at the same time Christ was upholding the whole universe, the cosmic order, he couldn't uphold his own head. His neck was too weak to raise his own head when he was once born. And so it's a paradox there. The bread was hungry. This is, of course, he's our Eucharist, right? He's the manna from heaven, and he feeds us, and yet he himself hungered. He's tying it right there to his mother's breast, of course. This is why I'm reading it in lieu of Christmas, or in light of Christmas. The light was asleep. You can imagine Christ is a sleeping baby, yet he's the light of the world. When we fall asleep, it's almost like passing into unconsciousness is passing into like a shadow realm, right? Where our consciousness is darkened for a moment. So that's what he's getting at here. The light of life was asleep, and yet it burned on. The way was weary from the journey. The truth was accused by false witnesses. This is where it's getting, kind of takes you through Jesus' whole life, ministry, death, resurrection. Okay, so he was accused by false witnesses. This, of course, being Pilate and the Jews. They said that for my maybe non-Christian audience, Christ was killed for the crime of blasphemy, okay, claiming to be God, which, of course, he is God, so it's not truly a crime. But they, again, it's sort of a paradox or perhaps an irony that they put above him on his cross, King of the Jews. Okay, and they put it in all the languages of the day, meaning that's a universal truth, that he's the King of the Jews. The judge of the living and the dead was judged by a mortal judge. Can you imagine? Pontius Pilate will one day be judged in the same way that Christ was judged, but the roles are going to be reversed. So that's a very interesting, just play that out in your mind. To be a fly on the wall in that instance would be absolutely breathtaking. Justice was condemned by the unjust. The teacher was beaten with whips. This is his passion now, of course. Beaten with whips, flogged, a crown of thorns placed on his head. He was stripped naked, forced to walk with the cross on his back, all the way to the top of Calvary. The vine was crowned with thorns. The fountain was suspended on wood. That one is so interesting to me because he's saying the fountain, meaning he's like the font of life, okay? The living water. You see the instance where the Samaritan woman was at the well and Jesus was offering her water, which was a bold thing to do, or asking her for water, which was a bold thing to do in that day. And he made that bold claim to her that she only need drink his water, the eternal water, to live forever. And water, of course, you can't nail water to a cross. It's fluid, and yet that fountain of life was nailed to an instrument of death. Strength grew weak. The healer was wounded, and he chose not to heal himself. He chose not to have an army of angels save him from the cross. The healer was wounded, and then finally, life died. The life itself, being itself, succumbed to death. That's an interesting thought. That's not the end of the story, of course, and I haven't read the rest of the sermon, but I'm sure he goes on to explain that that's not the end, that life lived again, and that he conquered death. And he did so for you and for me, for every person, and that's a free gift. That's the most glorious gift. So I hope that you accept it. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Christmas, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.